Well, again, thanks to Stan and AI Bio for asking me to come out and chat with you today. It's wonderful to be in Alberta, and it's even more wonderful to know that the province has a history, long, not a lot of data, but a history of taking colorful city mayors and turning them into fantastic premiers. So maybe King Rob's got a nice ring to it. All right, as Jay mentioned, I'm with Magna International, and I'm here to talk about a project we're involved with AI Bio, and it really focuses maybe a little bit differently than the other speakers on much more entrepreneurial and much more consumer-focused activities. And so we'll use an automotive icon, a sign, to get things rolling. But I think the key piece for us is, it's very true. What Jay said, we have an incredibly different environment today for the nature of the product we're driving and buying. And it's being influenced massively by these mega trends, which affect actually everything that we're even talking about today. But I'll key in on a couple of them, and this really drives our role as a supplier. We're a supplier to the automotive companies. We do it a fair bit. And more we're being involved in designing, developing, engineering systems, products, features, and in fact architecting materials to provide those systems. So we look at trends like globalization, demographic change, of course scarcity or more distribution challenges with fossil fuels, and how does that affect what we do as producers of components and subsystems. Also very much interested in looking at demographic change. It changes many things. Obviously, as the population in developed nations or regions age, you have factors. It also shapes how companies position themselves to exploit those markets. Jay mentioned his son. I can attest to the fact that I have millennials that don't buy cars. In fact, they won't leave my basement. So Magna, in our quest to be the greatest and most innovative automotive parts manufacturer on the planet, has three primary strategies and priorities. One is world-class manufacturing. Second is people development to fuel this change. And the third is innovation. And when we look at innovation, of course, not uniquely, we look at innovation across a number of different attributes. And a key point, as Jay mentioned, is sustainability. We look at sustainability from the standpoint of economic sustainability as well as environmental. And really, at the end of the day, it drives down to reducing your input costs, which more and more are energy costs, and therefore it behooves all of us to find ways to identify lower cost energy sources, which oftentimes are sustainable. Schwack, beautiful. Kind of a sort of a tone-setting piece is globalization, and it can mean a number of things. But today I want to talk about it, I guess, in two ways. It also means for me today being on a 6 o'clock call to Germany and then having to be around for a 10 o'clock call to Japan, but that's my problem, not yours necessarily. It also means that our customers, and these are the large, highly integrated global car companies, are necessarily globalizing their product range to reduce engineering costs and to be more effective at providing product for various regions. And this is not, the global platform discussion is not the only discussion. There are other very, very important regional discussions, like, for instance, pickup trucks, which are an important economic driver in North America for obvious reasons. But in the case of the Golf platform, Volkswagen Audi Group, basically creates what are called top hats that go on top of the platform that's global to provide products into Spain, Czech Republic, North America under badges like Audi, Volkswagen, Skoda, et cetera. And so when we work with Volkswagen to provide technology for them, they say, great, I love it, but can you provide it where we build our cars? So it's a key piece, and it's not a big company diatribe to say that you have to be everywhere, but you need to be everywhere. So when you look at technology development, especially around materials development, you have to take that into consideration. How do you provide a uniform product delivery across the entire globe for a new and innovative product? So if you don't have a regional play, you've got to consider this. So we look at that as one of the many drivers. We also look at some of the facts, and it was touched on earlier in the intro. Obviously fuel economy regulations are increasing faster in China, mind you, than they are in North America, but nonetheless they're increasing. And that's huge. The 54.5 mile per gallon is the iconic US fuel regulations, which are coming into play in 2017 and mature by 2025. Europeans consider more in terms of CO2 produced per kilometer driven by a vehicle, so CO2 regulations. Recyclability, very, very important. Today, the standards are approaching mid-90s for recyclability for the end-of-life product. And then key for me also is the $9.95 price piece. Because in Canada this spring, you'll be able to buy a Nissan Micra with a MSRP of $9,995. And that's a car with 5 doors, tons of airbags, steering wheel, all that good stuff. It's incredible. And not only is it a safe car, but it's not a car that's being dropped into a market to dump and try and win business. It's a major automaker's play to try and expand their range into smaller cars. It's legit, big time. So all that said, the challenges around weight reduction, which means typically they're in lighter materials or fewer materials, but you can't make smaller because people won't buy small. You know, consumers ultimately decide what they want. I want a pickup truck, I want a sedan, I want an SUV. It's got to do things for me. I'm not going to, downsize my needs to suit some regulatory requirements. So the challenge is to make these vehicles provide all the functions and features, but way less so they use less fuel. And that's why when DuPont asked engineers and designers a few years ago where they thought the shifts were in materials going forward, off the charts was advanced composites. So the idea of combining fiber with plastic, basically, and creating composite technologies like Boeing's using for the 787, whether it be carbon fiber or glass fiber. This idea of making plastic, punch above its weight through reinforcement is a key strategy for weight reduction. So if we look at fiber reinforced materials, in this case, biofiber reinforced materials, and typically that means an olefin like a polypropylene and a fiber. We're seeing a growth, as predicted by the study by DuPont, in these types of materials. And if you look at even today, a snapshot of 60 million cars produced and sold globally with about a 14 kilogram payload of these types of materials per car, it's a significant amount of material already in terms of just a current market size for this kind of material. Oftentimes, they're not global, but they're regionally applied technologies. Our goal now is to try and take that farther. So as an example of where this trend in fiber reinforced products is going, again, just blowing our horn for a second, we launched this year, or actually last year, 2013, a full olefinic, meaning polypropylene-based, fiber-reinforced liftgate assembly for Nissan, for the Rogue vehicle. Now, this stuff, plastic liftgates is not, cocktail party talk, for sure. But you're a captive audience, so I can I can take advantage of this. So it's a big deal for us because it's a first in North America, first in NAFTA. Nissan builds 170,000 Rogues. That's 730 of these things going out the door every day from our operation. And it's basically representative of this new technology, fiber-reinforced plastics, in this case glass-reinforced polypropylene, that's setting the stage for new types of paradigms for these systems. Provided Nissan with a weight saving and a cost saving, so that's what they want to hear. So all that said, we're a big user of plastics, as you can imagine. This is a quick snapshot for 2014. Approximately 225 million kilograms of plastic, resin, olefin, what have you, nylon, various other plastics. So we pay a lot of attention to this because it's a big deal for us. And if we start reinforcing these plastics, we have interesting new materials. I think going back to the other trend, which is the whole energy or the fossil fuel scarcity discussion, there are shifts, as certainly you well understand, regarding what types of fossil fuels are being harvested or extracted, whether it be shale gas or tight oil or bitumen-based oils and so on. And what that's changing for us is a change in how the co-products around refining these inputs is changing. And that directly impacts the economy around these different materials. So it's a bit of a moving picture all the time. So yeah, we buy a lot of plastic, and we buy a lot of plastic from some very, very large companies. And you'd think for us, automotive is a big deal, and it is. But for the guys and girls who own and drive these companies, automotive is not a big deal. It's important, but it's not a big deal. On an aggregate basis, all these large petrochemical companies typically sell less than 1% of their global turnover into automotive. So we think we're a big deal, but they don't. I mean, they like us and everything, but we're just not a big deal from a research perspective. They won't invest necessarily the kind of energy into innovation that we would like to see, because for them it's not that important. Touching on demographics, I mean, last week or a week and a half ago, Bayer announced that they were selling their plastics division so they could focus on pharma. Because they're seeing demographically it's more important to buy and do R&D in pharma, not so much in plastics, and certainly not so much for cars. So we've got a problem. Big demands for lower cost, lower weight, more sustainable, innovative materials, and we're kind of a little bit on our own in a sense, which is why we kind of found ourselves here, literally and actually. If you look at reinforcing plastics with fibers that aren't necessarily glass or carbon, inorganics, but look at organic fibers, it opens up a lot of opportunities for some pretty interesting material solutions. And it addresses some of the key drivers we're seeing from a megatrend perspective. Fossil fuel constraints, material shortages, and then, of course, demographic change as we trying to deal with different consumer behaviors. So today, we're talking about, very briefly, the work we're doing under AI Bio on wood fiber reinforced polypropylene. Basically, that's the deal. So we see this as a way to create not only a new material solution that's going to be lighter and cheaper potentially, but also one where we can get the kind of necessary research focus to actually create specific material platforms to generate the product functions that our customers need. And this is a very, very brief snapshot of what we're talking about, but essentially, we're trying to work to go right from forestry products into car parts. And what we know a lot about is on the right-hand side of the screen, combining polymers with fiber, designing systems, developing process technology, scaling it globally. But as we go to the left of the screen, we know slim to nil and slim's not home. So what we found in this partnership is a deep resource of research knowledge and engineering knowledge around fiber treatment, because at the end of the day, it's the fiber interaction with the polymer that makes it or doesn't make it. So that's our conceptual process path, and that's the work we've been doing over the last number of years with AITF and our partners. So the good news is if you're successful, and we think we are, and we will be more so going forward, what you end up with is a material that competes with essentially the blue bar on the left, which is a fiberglass reinforced polypropylene, standard Army issue material used for almost many car parts. You can get similar performance in terms of physical performance with a wood fiber reinforced component, and it has a lower density than the glass fiber reinforced system that it replaced, which means fundamentally for the same amount of work, you have a lower mass part, which is what drives to lighter vehicles and happy, low CO2 consuming customers. There's also some upside on cost because the fiber itself is lower cost than glass fiber, which translates into economic gain to allow us to build these 9995 Nissan Micros. So just again, throwing it back to my fellow speakers, just to thank the people who are involved in this process. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of it in the front end, which again is an area we don't have particular expertise. We found that expertise through our partnership. We have our friends at the Center for Research in Bioeconomy supporting this project. AI Bio, as we discussed, supporting the project. We've been working deeply with AITF on the fiber piece and some of the early compounding studies and doing the screening of different pulp technologies. And we have support through the NRC, who is basically a roommate at our Composites Technology Center in Toronto. So again, just going back to how we can use this, I think the original topic was secret ingredient to automotive technology advancement. We can see that by harnessing biomass, sustainable, globally relevant, and repeatable wood fiber technology, we can address some of these major concerns, megatrends, and be positioned properly to provide solutions going forward to satisfy consumer needs. All right, that's it for me. Thanks very much.